Hello, everybody. Welcome to class today. I hope you're looking at this notes thing after you've spent about 10 minutes working on your IXL skills to start class. You should have plenty of extra time today to be working on IXLs. Don't forget they are due Friday. Make sure you have submitted assignment number 37. We're going to go over that key here in just a minute. And then we are going to be taking notes in your packet. From page 2 and 3. If you don't have the packet, you're going to need to get some blank copies of the notes. If you are in period 2, you can get those from Mr. Shelley. If you're in period 3, you can ask Mr. Baker. Tell the sub you need to get a copy from Mr. Baker. All right, so here is the key to number 37. All you had to do was check what each property was being illustrated and give the name. Again, I do like stating commutative of addition or subtraction. Number 1 would have been of addition, and number 2 would have been identity of addition, whereas number 3 would have been associative of multiplication. So please take a minute there and check those items. If you need more time than I allow, then you can always stop the video and continue on. Here is the back side, looking at those properties that are being laid out there for you. And again, that is assignment number 37. 37. Once you have that all checked, again, make sure it says 37, put that in your binder and take out your packet. And we will be starting on page 2 on the next slide. If at any time through the video I'm going too fast, you're not sure what I'm talking about or what I'm referencing, feel free to stop the video, slow it down to the pace that you need to help you be as successful as possible with what's going on. All right, let's begin. Today we're going to spend specifically looking at the distributive property. And here you have the distributive property being illustrated on what's going on, what is happening in this property. This is what we call the pass out property. The A, or whatever number is in front of the variable, is being passed out or distributed. That's what the word distribute means, pass out, to everything in the parentheses. Now, this is just written for 2 letters, but I could have A times the quantity B plus C plus D, which would be A times B, A times C, and A times D. And you could have those 3 items, and you would have AB plus AC plus AD. So it's passing that out to each item. Okay, and we're going to do a whole lot with this concept when we get into algebra. Lots of different steps, lots of different things that we're going to be looking at. So it's really important that you understand the basic of what exactly is happening to help you be as successful as possible there. Okay, so let's look at what this looks like with just numbers. Often we do not talk about distributing when we have this value. If you had example 1, we've learned order of operations. You would take 3 times 11, and 3 times 11 would be 33. Right? Whereas when you think about it as passing out, it also means 3 times 5, which is 15. 3 times 5 is 15, and 3 times 6, which is 18. And if I add up 15 and 18, I get 33. Now, I'm not saying that I think you should do this option, but when we start putting in variables, that's what has to happen. And I want us to understand that even though we go through order of operations, it's the same thing here. If I had 10 times 6 minus 3, it would be 10 times 3, which is 30. done that in order of operations forever. I'm just trying to show you that it's the same thing if you pass it out. 10 times 6 would be 60, minus 10 times 3, which would be 30, and 60 minus 30 would be 30. Same answer. Now, things get a little bit tricky when you're passing out a negative, right? If I was doing this without passing out a negative, I would have negative 5 times 13. And a negative 5 times 13 would be 13 times 5. You'd multiply that on the side. That'd be 5, carry my 1, 65, negative 65. So how do I get that if I'm distributing? Well, it means I'm going to take a negative 5 times 8, which would give me negative 40, plus a negative 5 times 5, which would give me negative 25. And negative 25 and negative 40, if they're both pulling down, is going to give me negative 65. Okay? So I want you to understand how it works when it's just numbers, so that when it is not just numbers, when there are variables involved, even though there aren't all numbers, we're still going to do the exact same thing. And by the exact same thing, I mean you are going to pass this 7 out to every item. And so earlier in the week, we talked about being an expression being simplified means you got to collect like terms and you can't have parentheses. So sometimes we're going to have to distribute in order to make that happen. And tomorrow when I get back, we're going to be combining things. So we're putting lots of skills we've learned throughout the year together into bigger and more complex problems. So looking at number 4, you have 7 times the group T minus 2, which would be 7 times T minus 7 times 2. And 7 times T you can't do anything with. You just have to write it as 7T. You don't put a dot, anything like that. You've distributed, that's the coefficient in front of the T. But 7 times 2 you can do, which would be a negative 7 times 2, which would be minus 14. 7T minus 14. Now we learned before break that this could also be written as negative 14 plus 7T. Can change the order and these would be exactly the same because they both have 2 terms and they both work. Try number 5 for me right now. Pause the video, find your answer to number 5, and once you have it written down, restart the video. Here you're going to have 5 times A, and then you're going to have 5 times 3. 5 times A doesn't simplify. It is simplified, but 5 times 3 simplifies to 15. Final answer. If you happen to write 15 plus 5A, that would be equivalent. I don't know why you would when it's written like this, but those two things are equivalent. Distributing a negative can be kind of tricky. Put a star by it. When you're distributing this negative here, most kids get the first term right, negative 2x. But now you're distributing a negative 2 times a positive 5. Remember, whatever sign's in front of it is its sign. So a negative 2 times a positive 5 is going to be minus 10. You are not going to type this into big ideas today. I get kids all the time that try to do this, plus negative 10. That will get counted wrong. You can't have those two signs together. Write whatever sign it is in front of the number, a negative 2, positive 5, negative 10. In number 7, you have a negative 8 times x, negative 8x. And then you have a negative 8 times a negative 4. And a negative 8 times a negative 4 means I'm going to have negative 8x. And negative times a negative is going to be a plus 32, because a negative times a negative is a positive. Distributing a negative is often one of the most challenging skills. A lot of kids get the first term right and the second term wrong because they forget to pass that negative out to that last term. Sometimes you're going to have to distribute with decimals. or fractions. That doesn't change what you do. You still got to pass it out. You still got to multiply. Remember, distributive means you're multiplying. So you're going to be practicing multiplying decimals and fractions. 1.5 times 8. 1.5 times 8. You can do that off to the side of your paper. It's 40. It's 12. Move my decimal in. So I'm going to have 12m. Because I had 1.5 times 8, m. And then I'm going to have 1.5 times n, which means I'm going to have a negative, because that's a negative and a positive, 1.5 n. Still the same thing, just be ready tonight to be doing some decimal work. If you have decimals in the parentheses or outside, it just means instead of being able to do whole number multiplication, you might have to come out to the side of your paper and write that out. When you're doing the fraction, you're going to be multiplying a fraction times whatever number's in there. So for this first part, you're going to have negative 1/3 times 3n. Negative 1/3 of 3 would give me negative n. And for the second part, you're going to have negative 1/3 times negative 6. So I'm going to cancel that to a 1 and that to a 2. And that's going to give me a negative times a negative is a positive. So I'm going to get negative n plus 2. So just because the number out in front is a decimal or a fraction, it does not change how you go about doing the problem. If there's a fraction on the inside of the parentheses, you're still going to be multiplying whatever's in front times there. So we're going to be reviewing our multiplication of all types of numbers today. That concludes our notes for today. You are going to be doing an assignment in your online textbook over the distributive property. It is assignment 38. You're going to write your work on your paper. Make sure you write out the number, the problem, show all your steps for distributing. Make sure you're checking as you go. You got to get a 70 or higher. Let's see, there's 20 problems, so I think you can miss, let's see, I think you can miss 6 or so and still get a 70. Do know that problems 1 through 7 are review from previous skills. So when you get in there, don't be like, this isn't the right assignment. Problems 1 through 7 are all review of decimals and fractions and absolute value and integers and exponents. And then when you get to problem 8, you start the distributive stuff. Don't forget to click the 3 lines and submit your answers when you're done. And you're going to submit both your work and your score. 2 submission shots. Should be working the rest of the period. If you get done, and you very well might, you can be working on IXL skills for today or for this week. Good job today. I will be seeing you back in class tomorrow.